Welcome to another Bandology interview. Bandology is a Canadian nonprofit dedicated to more music for more kids via education, collaboration, and community.
Hey everyone, my name is Lucas Redwood and I am the music manager with Bandology. I'm super excited to be here today with Joel Cassady. He is the drummer for the band Walk Off the Earth. How are you doing today, Joel?
Doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here, dude. No problems.
So Joel, can you start off by telling us when you first started playing music?
Wow. Yeah. This is the moment where I officially start to feel old. I just turned 33. So it's like, okay. I got into music way early. My mom was actually a trumpet soloist in a drum corps back in the day out in Brantford, Ontario, believe it or not. She was part of the, they were called the Optimists out there. She spent the bulk of her kind of younger years actually on, funny enough, on tour buses and kind of like doing her thing, doing competitions and stuff. So she's always taken credit for that musical side of me. But my first actual sort of boots on the ground introduction was with piano. I just kind of happened upon piano when I was younger. I got into lessons, the whole thing. That was my first moment of relatability for like, okay, this music thing, like, here's what's going on. Here's a way for me to find out how much musicality is in me. I loved it. But the other side of that was that my mom was a pretty intense person and she was always there kind of like coaching me and policing me, so to speak, through rehearsing. So as I kind of got into my, rebellious teen years, the idea of, being a piano player that was coached by his mother kind of lost the appeal a little bit. So at that time, totally cliche wise, I got into, actually, funny enough, electric guitar from there. And that was a first kind of thing where I was going to be like, you know what, screw you, mom and dad, I'm going to be a rock star. So getting a hold of a guitar, having some fun with that. Yeah. Having some fun with that. But then ultimately finding my way into the drum kit. And the way that happened, interestingly enough, was my elementary school. This was Frontenac Public School in Burlington, Ontario. It came time in band class for us to all be assigned instruments. I think this is going back to grade 7, probably. Of course, everybody wants to play a rhythm section instrument. They want to play keys. They want to play drums, bass, or guitar. The idea there was that some of the people in the class had already maybe taken some lessons on those things. So our teacher, Mrs. Flanagan, she said, actually, you guys that do have experience on those instruments, you're not allowed to do it. We want to give this to people who haven't had any exposure to that yet. So I raised my hand for drums. Little did Miss Flanagan know it. It's funny because I've run into her since and been like, you're the reason why I got a chance to really do this. She happened to pick me for drum kit. So that was grade 7. And that was really, I guess that's a quick way of the piano to the guitar to ultimately the fateful moment of being chosen as one of many kids with his hand up in music class in grade 7 to land on drum kit. And as they say, the rest is history, man.
Nice. That's such a great story. A great evolution from how you got into drums. Wow. And so then you went to Nelson High School.
I did,
which is actually my high school as well.
And you know what? And I didn't realize until I didn't realize how good I had it at Nelson. And back in the day, I had Mr. Eady and Mr. Heaslip as teachers, being in jazz works, being in concert band. I didn't realize that not every school had an actual full-fledged like music performance element to their music program. Not every school had that. And I didn't realize that until a few years later. But how great was it to actually have a chance to really continue my journey that started in elementary, getting into high school by actually being able to be part of a jazz band and a concert band and start to play in bands, outside of school too. Like that's something that I'm just so grateful for, because I know people who their music program was entirely on a computer, for example, right? Like that's the reality. And I know, there's a great charity in Canada called Music Counts that really aims to try and get instruments in the hands of people that are from communities and from parts of the country that just don't have that ability. And I think that's so important. And we've supported that with WODA a whole bunch, because I certainly wouldn't be here and without something like that. And I know there's a lot of other musicians that are at that certain level from Canada that same deal wouldn't be in the same spot were it not for them having a great educational upbringing, from elementary right through to high school and beyond, with actually getting a chance to practically get involved and play instruments and learn music, the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Nelson had such a fantastic music program. Did you guys ever get a chance to do music fest competitions?
Of course, man.
Yeah. Way back in the day. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great to hear those still going on. Yeah, those are all like just such great memories too, because it's like it was just really nothing replaces that, like that real world experience. You can learn. It's just like, the university versus college thing, where it's like you can read the book about it and get all the theoretical knowledge, or you can actually get the practical applied version of that. And of course, that's going to be the most valuable one, especially with something like music. So it's, just so grateful for that.
Absolutely. So moving past high school, were there ever any difficulties during the start of your career that you faced? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So I'd never actually taken drum lessons. Coming out of high school, I'd never taken drum lessons. I just kind of like was obsessed with Travis Barker. And at the time, John Theodore, the original drummer from the Mars Volta. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but these days he's playing with Queens of the Stone Age. He's like modern day John Bonham is like kind of what his whole thing was, right? Playing the Vista Lights and just playing with so much force and energy. I'll never forget seeing the Mars Volta open for System of a Down many years ago at the ACC. And it was a 4-song intro set they did. It was like an hour long, 4 songs, an hour long. And I remember the lights came up and his body was steaming. There was steam rising off his body.
Oh, wow.
And this guy is awesome. So getting out of high school, being obsessed with those guys, essentially they were my teachers, right? Studying songs like that. I never actually went the drum lesson route until I realized, I want to take this to the next level. I want to go to music school for this. I need to actually be able to play by the rules of, the audition requirements over at Humber, right? So and of course Mohawk as well, and a few other spots, U of T, they need to actually see some really specific stuff. So I didn't know what some of this stuff was at the time. I didn't know what a bossa nova groove or a samba groove was. So I had to go for drum lessons and do that, right? So that was kind of my first exposure to that. And I spent that year out of high school sort of just getting that stuff together. And then from there, I went right into, auditioning for the degree program. And I didn't actually get that. I got the intro program. That's what I was able to get. So I took that as a huge win and got myself into intro. And that was kind of my entry point into Humber and into music school, which then saw me, transitioning from the intro year. The intro year, you all the tools are there, but there's no guarantee, of course, right, to get into degree from there. You have to re-audition. So that was obviously a year-long lead up to a very stressful second audition, which fortunately went well. And that was back when Mark Kelso was still running the ship over there. And yeah, getting into Humber, and I'll never forget sitting down with Mark early on and just kind of in masterclass, hearing his stories about him being a student of the program way back in the day, and him, making a point of letting us know that, music school is an interesting thing. This is coming from Mark Kelso, which is like, he was like, whatever he says goes, what kind of thing. So I was just all ears for a guy like that. And him saying, guys, when I was younger and I was going here, I had the chance to play to leave school for a bit and play with Shaka Khan and go on tour with her. And he's like, I took that. He's like, I want you guys to know that obviously music school and art school is a bit of an interesting thing, because, you come out of this with a degree. That doesn't necessarily mean that you show up to a rehearsal or an audition with your degree in tow, and that's going to guarantee you anything. Basically, he was saying, I don't want you guys to ever feel bad about if the right gig or the right opportunity comes up along the way here and you need to take some time or potentially even not return to school. That's okay. Just like it's okay to, if you really feel a strong connection to what's happening here, to the educational side of this, that's wonderful. Obviously it's different strokes and there's no two paths to success in music that are the same, right? So I'll never forget that, because what happened after my first year was, I think I would slot myself more in the former category that I just mentioned, where I loved being at school. I loved learning about new types of music and performing, but there was something in me that like really, again, being obsessed with the bands and the artists that I like and seeing them tour and go on the road and stuff. There was something in me that just wanted to experience that ASAP. Like I realized that if I stuck out the whole stretch of years, maybe I could wind up in that spot, but there was like this burning desire in me to want to get a feel for that. So, funny enough, the summer of my first year, as I was already thinking about like, do I want to maybe refocus or go elsewhere here? I got a chance to go on a tour, my first ever tour overseas to Europe with a local Toronto singer-songwriter named Barzin, which just kind of came out of nowhere through a couple of connections that I had through some bands that I'd been in. And I took that, and that was the moment where all these thoughts that I'd been having about like, I really want to do that. Like more than I want to be in school, I want to do that. I had a chance to really get a taste of that. And that was just like a life-defining experience for me to be able to come back from that and say, that's what I want. And just to kind of cap off the Kelso story, going back to school in second year, because there was that side of me too. And, much as my parents were so supportive, I don't think any parent doesn't want to see their kid follow through on something like that, right? Especially in music, where it's like, are you sure you want to take this leap of faith away from it, right? So the moment that was sitting back down with Kelso, coming off that summer, getting into second year, and being able to really honestly and openly, how many people could say this, that they could sit down with a professor theirs in any other realm of study and get a response this honest and open? I sat down with him. I said, hey man, I got a chance to do this thing over the summer, and it's really lit a fire in me that tells me that I potentially need to go and just kind of really seek out more opportunities like that right now. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to wait through the next 3 years of study. And he said, dude, and he told me the very same story. When I was in your shoes, when I was going to Humber, I felt the same way. I really wanted to finish. My parents pressured me to want to get through it, but I started getting gigs and I started getting tour offers. And if nothing else, they say with Berklee College of Music, for example, if you graduate Berklee, your teachers have failed you, which is a funny thing. Obviously, for so many, getting to the end and getting the degree is a huge achievement and success. And I don't want to shade or misconstrue how valuable that is for so many people. I can just speak for myself and speak out of my own experience that I'm not sure if I would have taken that step without the support of the most inspirational person in my life at that time, Mark Kelso, saying, I did it. You can do it too. School's always going to be here. Go after it. Go and get it. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget a few years later when we won the Juno for Group of the Year, linking up with Mark Kelso at the Juno Awards. And what a full circle moment that was to be able to tell him, I don't think I'd be here right now without your support. So just wanted to mention that. And of course, really just revisit the fact that my story, I'm well aware, is unique. I have so many buddies that stuck it at Humber that are so glad that they did and have moved on to a master's program or to, stay within the realm of music education, this sort of stuff, who are so glad that they finished. And that's wonderful. Different strokes for different folks, of course, every time. That's just my story, essentially. And I guess to go back to your question of, difficulties along the career path, that internal battle of willing myself up with the courage to have that chat with a Mark Kelso and then actually taking that step was absolutely horrifying. And full disclosure, man, when I first finally decided to take that step and go back home, move back in with my folks in Burlington, I got pretty depressed. Going from this path that going into it, I think a lot of folks might think that it's this pretty tried and true thing where you can more or less just tick all the boxes and then you're going to wind up on the other side with ready to be employed and ready to join a great band. It is so much down to how much grind you apply to it, especially in the applied arts, especially in something like music. And, sidestepping the school system, leaving the school system, going back home, the weight of that hit me hard. Like, okay, this is on me and no one else, in a way that, sure, there's a way to kind of like, you can just sort of coast your way through school if you want. Is it going to help you out? Not very much, but there is a way to theoretically just kind of do the bare minimum and get out with the accreditation in hand. But going back home and having that moment, it hit me super, super, super hard. Like, it's not like I had another gig waiting for me. I was able to, because of getting a chance to do that tour, and because I was back home in Burlington. Burlington's a really musically driven city, and I was able to, just based on that, put the word out and get in with some folks. But it really hit me hard, and that was a very tough moment initially, of just being like, what do I do here? This whole path, the pressure's on. You know what I mean? My parents, who I was able to convince, guys, I think I need to leave school, even if just for now. The pressure was on to really deliver on that. They are supporting me and giving me a house and supporting my education, and the pressure's on me to figure it out. So there was me grinding and doing whatever I could and taking wedding gigs and doing just lots of stuff. I'll never forget always borrowing my mom's Toyota and just packing it full of drums and just driving in the middle of the winter, to some bar on Queen Street or whatever, and playing gigs, doing whatever it took. Right. So, the grind years. And then fast forward a bit, and, I got a call from this dude, Johnny Nicasio, who is the founder of a band called Walk Off the Earth. And funny enough, I got that call because the valedictorian and a longtime buddy of mine, valedictorian in my high school years, a buddy named Tyler Norton, trombone player, he went to Humber. Humber wasn't the vibe for him, but he went there. And through Humber, his Humber Connects, he had a chance to, Wout had been around for several years at that time, to go on tour with Wout. They did Warped Tour way back in the day. He got a chance to be part of their horn section. And when their original drummer took off, Johnny hit up Tyler and said, hey, a lot of, talented music school type folks, send me some drummer names. We're looking for a new drummer. That's how that connection happened. So there I was at home, doing everything I could to prove to my folks that it was the right decision, that I want to get back on the road. I want to be this touring musician. And I get the call from G. And, at that time, quote was really early. I think it was like there was maybe like 3,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and even off of that, because that was kind of like phase one, wave one of artists starting to leverage YouTube to kind of create their own following and create their own buzz and success. Even through those initial subscribers, there was a UK tour on the table. So that was just like the most exciting thing to me, to be like, yes, like it's been a really tough stretch of months here. And it's been like, I was like full on depressed and on meds and stuff. Like it was that bad, but here's this golden opportunity. Let's do it. I'm all in. Let's go for it. Funny enough, that tour never happened, but obviously getting involved with what did still happen. And, 10 years later, here we are still doing it, man. So it's been a wild ride.
Wow. What a story. Thank you so much for sharing that. No, that is just so incredible.
It's wild, man.
A great pathway.
Yeah, right. Like and you speak to other people that have had a chance to really, really do it and really, make it, whatever that means. And there's so many stories like that where it was just like I was sleeping in my car for a while and I was taking the worst gigs in the world, and then like the grind, and then just that moment just comes. And oftentimes it's when you least expect it, or when it's from someone who you would never think would be the one giving you that call. But that's just how it tends to go a lot of the time, man. One of those weird happenstance things, or a fate thing, or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting, and I think it's I always had a poster in my room when I was a kid that my mom put in there, talking about luck is a funny word, right? The idea of you make your own luck, right? I would lean more toward the word fortune, to be fortunate, right? To create your own fortunate opportunities. I've always kept that with me too, because it's like, sure, there's people who can get lucky if they win the lottery or something, but if you're a person who wants that great gig, that gig that's going to really get you to that next level, you make your own luck along the way to that. There's ways to go about that. They can add to your luck or create that fortunate opportunity for you, that I think is worth mentioning, because that was certainly something that drove me even through those tough times. The idea of even these shitty gigs and these really kind of weird looks and stuff, those are still, every look is a look, every gig is a gig, everything is an opportunity for me to get that much more kind of mileage and more experience that I can then carry with me, hopefully, to that next level opportunity,
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of your favorite performance highlights of being in Walk Off the Earth? I know there's probably a lot.
Yeah, dude. I'm like, just, these are the moments too. Cause like we're so go that we rarely take moments, and I need to take more of them, of just pausing and like reflecting back on what an incredible ride it's been, that we're still on, by the way. Like, I think about getting to play Red Rocks, for example, right? Getting to play Wembley in the UK, playing right before the pandemic hit, playing the Sydney Opera House, these are things that I don't even think I would have been able to say they were on my bucket list as a younger kid, because like they just seem so out of reach. And here I am now, being able to, on the other side of that, being able to say we really got a chance to do that, getting a chance to share the stage with people who I've looked up to forever. Like I'll never forget, like going out to Bulgaria and being able to hang out with Erykah Badu out there, for example, in Cypress Hill randomly, like getting a chance to hang out with, someone like Seal, for example, backstage at the Ottawa Blues Fest, like getting a chance to get hit up by, Russell Crowe and his the music that he was doing, getting a call from Coldplay during 2012 when things were going crazy for us, wanting us to cover one of their songs, and having to say no to them because we were so busy. Like these sorts of moments that are wild. I think my single most favorite performance moment was when we went to Japan for the first time. This was back in, I think, late 2012, 2013. And the festival is called Summer Sonic, and they had us, it takes place for the most part in these airplane hangars. And that was a year where like, Pitbull had just blown up. He was one of the big headliners. Foster the People, that was when Pumped Up Kicks was like taking over the world. So here we are, we get on site. We're there, like first time in Japan for all of us. The culture shock is crazy. They're taking us to check out where we're going to be performing a few hours before we actually did it. And we're driving past all the airplane hangars and we're like, okay, isn't that where all the stages are? Like, where are we going here? It took us to this beach stage, it was called, where it was a stage on a beach and there was nobody around. And we're like, okay, is this how it goes for a new band here? Like, we're just going to be stuck on the beach stage and we're gonna be playing to, the fishes out here. Fast forward 2 hours, we come back and there was 5,000 people there just that went nuts. Like G and Sarah were crowd surfing. I'll never forget looking out. And like, that was also our first exposure, as mentioned, to Japanese audiences who were just like the most well-behaved and uniform and so respectful, and wait until the song is done to clap. But then like, we'll jump in unison. And like, we're so down to do the crowd surf thing. And like, it was just such a cool moment. I remember us being so nervous. Like, this is one of our first big international festivals. we don't want to be a laughing stock, being so nervous about that, and then coming back and seeing this huge crowd there, and like that's definitely like a flashbulb memory for me that I'll definitely never forget.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a really cool highlight and opportunity.
Yeah, dude, so wild, man.
And so you've done Walk Off the Earth has done a couple of performances throughout the pandemic, and one that came to mind for me was in December of 2020. You guys performed at the Performing Arts Center.
Yeah.
And what was kind of your experience like playing music during the pandemic?
Well, playing music amongst ourselves and doing our thing at the studio, like that's, that was just kind of what it always was, just more of it, getting forced off the road and doing that and doubling down on making digital content and this sort of stuff was all good. But yeah, certainly finding those opportunities, still having the opportunities come in, whether it be a drive-in show, which we did a few of, which was its own super strange experience. Like, okay, everybody, put your blinkers on and put your blinkers on left to right. Like, it was so strange.
I forgot those were a thing. Yeah.
Glad we did one, but like our buddy Brett Kissel, for example, did a whole Canada-wide tour of those, and like,
oh, wow, yeah.
Like it's one was enough for us. I'm glad that those are kind of hopefully behind us. But so that was strange, and yeah, getting the Burlington PAC one was interesting because there we were at this great venue in our hometown, but of course no one was in the crowd, right? It was live streamed. So I would say that was almost weirder because at least the drive-in thing, that was a completely new experience in every sense. The Burlington PAC one was like, we've played a lot of performing arts centers. We played a lot of theaters like that. To be in there and have it feel like a sound check because there's nobody in the audience, but have it be the actual performance was a total trip. But it was still a great time. The Sound of Music folks put that on. We love those guys. We longtime friends of ours, and it was just a great opportunity for us at that time, to be itching to get back to that and at least be able to get halfway there kind of thing, and at least get on stage and bring our whole crew out and get the light show going and the whole thing, but it's certainly, as I'm sure every artist who's had to deal with this through the pandemic would say, it just hasn't been the same. And we had a chance to do our first in-person performance late last year, like in September, go down to Bottle Rock Festival in Napa, California, which was just incredible, man. Like it's hanging with Dave Grohl, like Foo Fighters were headlining. Wow. Just getting a chance, like just to be at a packed festival experience. This is before, like, there was like a little gap. There's been a couple in like global case counts. There was this like small gap where I think California just jumped on it, and they basically had like a no holds barred music festival. And I'm just so glad we got to do that. We did that. We did a club gig in SF, and we did another, like a headliner at a club in Napa as well on that trip. And it was just like the best feeling, man. Cause it's been great to be at home and sleep in our own beds every night and get back to really prioritizing digital content and this sort of stuff. But grass is always greener. And I think whether you're a person that gets to be on stage to perform or a person that loves to be in the audience, I think both sides could agree that nothing replaces that experience, right? So I think really missing that and getting a chance to do it was special.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in the start of Walk Off the Earth, you guys released an awesome cover of Somebody That I Used to Know. And that, I think, was one of the pivotal moments.
That was the moment. That was
the moment. Yeah. It seems like there was quite a bit of, can you talk a bit about the arranging process and maybe some your guys' songwriting process as well?
Sure, for sure, man. Yeah. So Johnny, he started the band with Marshall, who's no longer in the group, but they co-founded the group. And at that time, certainly in the early years, it was those two putting their heads together. And, G was always the more producer guy and Marshall was always the more songwriter guy. It was kind of their 1-2 punch approach. Getting into the band that took shape, when I joined, and Mike Taylor had recently joined, and Sarah Blackwood was at the time a solo artist that G was working with. She wasn't officially in the band yet, but she was collaborating so much, and G was working on her records so much that she was just guesting in almost every video. Funny enough, she wasn't officially in the band when we shot Somebody That I Used to Know. Of course, very soon after that, she was officially in the band, but she wasn't officially in the band up until that point. But yeah, as far as the arranging and the songwriting, it's changed a whole bunch over the years based on the changes that the group has gone through. But what's stayed the same the whole time is that, it's a very open format in the sense that when I hear something that I enjoy on the cover side, certainly that's really stuck in my head, I'll even back to my Humber days, being interested in production back then and getting an early copy of Ableton and that becoming a big part of my musical journey over these years, knocking together demos and sending those to G and kind of sending stuff back and forth and this sort of thing. That was early days when that was kind of like, a good way to go for us. But on the original side too, same deal. Like if anyone ever had an idea, and Marshall is just a fantastic writer. He would kind of cover that for the most part. G and Sarah would do their thing, but like there's been multiple woe tunes that have started, on my end. MT was great as well, where you get that ball rolling. You have a lyric idea, you have a lick idea, you send that to your group, and it just evolves from there, right? I think that kind of workflow, despite the fact that the lineup in the band and the kind of just like the various things within the group have changed so much over the years, that has kind of stayed the same, where it's very open, like no ideas are shot down. We've kind of wound up in this position where we're kind of like ultra eclectic, right? Like we've collaborated with Steve Aoki and made EDM tracks, and then we just dropped like a bluegrass cover, right? Like we're all over the map. But for better or for worse, it's kind of made us a marketing nightmare in certain senses, but at the same time, I think it's a big part of the reason why we're still here. So especially in the spirit of that eclecticism and the fact that like right around my Humber years, I actually started getting really deep into people like James Blake and like Subtract and like the more kind of forward thinking, like earthy electronic that was happening in the UK. That got me really excited about that stuff. And to this day, I'm still really into that stuff. So me bringing that to the table, and a guy like G, who's like a Frank Zappa fanatic, bringing that to the table, and Sarah coming from like, believe it or not, like the punk rock background, and Marshall coming from the more like kind of Bob Dylan side of things, MT coming from, believe it or not, like the more Broadway show tunes type world. What a mixed bag that was, right? To bring all those influences in. So I think I'm so glad that it's always been that open experience too, where it's not just kind of like one or two people that are kind of doing the thing. And then it's just like, here's the song, deal with it. It's always been open, and it continues to be open. And I'm super grateful for that, because I know very well how many bands don't run that way with it and how many problems that can create. I'll never forget when we first signed with Columbia Records back in the day, and we were shooting our first video for Red Hands out in Los Angeles, and our video guy, Columbia, he was super stressed all day and he was on his phone. And I'm like, Brian, what's going on, dude? And he was like, man, I'm so stressed right now. I'm talking to the 5 separate members of Aerosmith and their 5 separate managers, because they do not speak to each other. When they go on the road, they have 5 different buses. They have pre-rehearsed banter every day. They hate each other. And believe it or not, like this is like, especially these like legacy acts, for some reason, I guess they've just been through too much stuff together, because like, that seems to be the case more often than not. So I'm just so glad that that's never been the case for us. And despite losing MT, despite Marshall, wanting to go his own way, that's been able to kind of stay central to the group. And I think that is why we're still here. We just celebrated 10 years of that video coming out, and here we are with arguably more opportunities on the table than ever, and still doing our thing, man. So it's like, I'm super grateful for that. Hopefully that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No, thank you for that. No, I really, that's really cool how you guys have that open communication, and you can see it in your videos too. There's every video I've watched is super creative, like with the arranging and everything. Like there's a lot of you can tell that all those influences are coming together to produce the final result.
Totally, man. I should say too, with the ones that are like especially Rube Goldberg machine-esque, like really crazy choreographed kind of what, like for example, Shape of You was a really big one for us. We were out for kind of like half the year in Hermosa Beach in California, and that was in the basement of the house we were renting. That's one where I actually started that one in Ableton, and this became kind of like a good workflow for us, where like we arrange it ahead of time, because obviously these parts need to get delegated, especially when every 8th note is you're going to be doing something else. So, getting stuff slotted out in like an Ableton, and then actually duplicating tracks and starting to mute stuff, starting to essentially delegate ahead of time, and then we create this sort of whiteboard where we'd have like the G, the Joel, the Sarah, like we'd have the whole thing, and we just start to actually delegate parts to that and just take it really slow and essentially say, okay, so if Sarah on the second beat is hitting the red boom whacker, that means she can't also hit the purple bell, this sort of stuff. So it's almost this like subtractive process of arranging, where you get the full robust sounding arrangement in there, and then you kind of work backwards, almost delegating those parts in a way that's both feasible and also is going to look interesting, right? Because obviously we're a visual band, where when you're a band that has so much success on YouTube, you have this kind of onus put on you to be such a visually stimulating band. So that's something that I wanted to mention on the arranging side. That's like it's we throw it all at the software, and then we start to just like delegate and divvy from there based on literally what's humanly possible or not.
Yeah, there's definitely more differences between if you have it all perfect on the computer and then replicating it live. So that's
And we
really
know
cool.
it's never going to go down the same way. There's always going to be little mistakes and stuff. But that's what that you keep those because that's that human side, right? That's that people have always told us. I feel like you guys are just like my buddies from down the street, and it's so interesting. It's always been interesting to hear that, but I think that's part of the relatability factor, the fact that we're so obviously just normal folks, and the fact that it's leaning into mistakes and being able to celebrate those sort of imperfections just in the same way that certainly jazz music celebrates and sort of stuff. It's about just kind of going for it. Obviously we're in a very different realm than that, but I think there's crossover elements when it comes to like embracing mistakes and embracing flaws. Realistically, those are kind of what actually create a lot of the character regardless of genre, right? So yeah
absolutely. So do you guys have anything exciting coming up or with the band?
Yeah. So in addition to really just doubling down on like our output when it comes to covers and originals both, and releasing, recently releasing a new album and still releasing a steady slew of covers, we fortunately enough were able to sell an animated show project earlier in the pandemic that had been in the works for 5 or 6 years. Our buddy Ross Van Oker and his partners at EDH Animation. Our guy Ross is like a super accomplished Hollywood filmmaker in the animation space. We wound up getting connected to him years back through a friend of ours, Jenny Plow. And even back then he was like, I want to make this animated show with you guys. We thought he was like a crazy person. Like we didn't even know who it was. We're like, get away from us, man. Like, what do you mean? And like, we had enough stuff going on. So we were like, cool. Like, let us know. Like, I guess we're okay. Like, we'll see what happens. He was so driven that he actually was able to create this AR enhanced comic book that we sold on tour called Wote in Space. And it was about us getting abducted and having to be a band on tour in space. And it was this neat, super cool, actually, like this comic book that you could actually hold your phone over and it would come to life in certain ways. We use that as almost like a litmus test to gauge the how much excitement there would be around a potential animated series about that happening. So it kind of went away for a while. We heard various updates. It was kind of like, oh, we might have an opportunity here or here or here. It never really went anywhere. And then fast forward to the pandemic hitting, we got the call from Ross that we just received. The show's been greenlit. The funding's been put up. The team's there. We're clear for a 14 episode first season and likely a 14 episode second season of this show that we're doing. We just did VO for episode 10 the other day. We're creating an original song for every episode. We're bringing in guest stars. We're targeting people like Jack Black and Sia to be part of the show. Snoop Dogg is a buddy of ours. Like, it's what a cool opportunity to get a chance to do that in amidst all the other stuff we do to kind of break new ground. None of us other than Sarah on a few American Dad episodes back in the day have ever done any professional voice acting. So that's been incredible. Getting a chance to work remotely with, man, like it's talk of the ways in which the pandemic has forced people to just find a way. We get on these VO sessions and there we are in our studio in Burlington. There's a team from India. There's a team from London, England. Some folks are in Montreal. Some of our folks are in Ojai, California, all coming together on the same Zoom and helping this show come to life, despite the fact that we can't actually get in the same spot and get in the studio together. So that's been an incredible thing. Definitely keep an eye out for that. The craziest thing about getting independent financing for a show like that is that we don't actually have a confirmed streaming partner yet. But Deepak, who's our financier, has so many deep connections with the likes of Netflix, with the likes of Disney Plus, with the likes of, Amazon Prime, that our understanding is that it's essentially just a phone call. Once we're wrapped on our first season, it's like, cool. Okay, I'm going to call my guy Disney. We're going to get it slotted in. So super exciting. That's been really great. And also, because we are that visual band and we are that kind of, that viral band to a lot of businesses and corporations, this sort of stuff, brands especially, we've always had an opportunity to do really neat partnerships with, we've done a bunch with car companies, with, food brands, with really anything out there. There's certainly a lot of value in our operation that we didn't even know until we started getting hit up by these companies to partner with them. And actually, the difference when with a Wote partnership with a brand kind of thing happens, most of the time there'll be a third party producer. There'll be a separate production company brought in. Because Wote has always been this kind of DIY operation, we've always kind of worn as many hats as we need to get the job done and bring the vision to life. We actually get hired as the production company as well when we do these things, because how weird would it be if the way in which we kind of get our style and our vibe across, if that was kind of coached and thought up by a third party, right? So it's been neat to it's not a common thing, but we when people hire us, they hire Wote as the talent, but they hire Wote as the production company as well. And we've always thought that was kind of a neat thing that helps set us apart a little bit, that hopefully we can spread that kind of spirit to other artists, that like, you can do that too. You can, just because your expertise may lie in the making of the music or the performing of the music doesn't mean that, we were chatting a bit before this, man, about business, being business savvy and really thinking business first, even within the context of something like music, how important that is. And we've certainly seen that be a benefit through this whole journey, but especially through the pandemic, to actually find, in certain senses, more opportunities than we've ever had in the pandemic. I realize we know so many bands out there that may have not prioritized the internet in the way that we have over these years. And certainly any band that wasn't doing that pre-pandemic got a rude awakening when the pandemic hit. Like, this is our only way right now to get our stuff out there. We should probably figure this out. So definitely grateful that's been something that we've had the ability to continually have access to. It's I know that's not the norm for so many groups, but it's our hope that we can kind of help normalize that. And we've seen that happen with some other artists and stuff, and people that have been close with us over the years. Just to empower independent artists, man. Like, it's so important. It's here we are getting into the era of Web3, right? Where like essentially all these intermediaries and all these kind of gatekeepers are starting to go away, and they're getting really nervous. And the same way the big banks are getting nervous with cryptocurrency, the advent of Web3 and non-fungible tokens and these sorts of things, where you can put a community together around an idea and cut out all the middle people, is super, super exciting. There's more opportunities right now for independent artists than there's ever been. And if we can help get the word out there about that, that's the way we see it, in the interest of paying it forward as a group that's gotten a chance to do something that we know damn well not everyone's going to get a chance to do, even if they're the most talented person in the world. We would be remiss not to want to at least pay it forward and help people realize that there are, just like how YouTube 10 years ago gave us a chance to have the ball in our court when every record label in the world came knocking. Here we are at the advent of Web3, the decentralized internet, where literally all you need is a great relationship with your supporter base, your audience, and you don't need a whole lot of other people with their hands in your pockets that have always been there. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool to hear some of the ins and outs of different ways you can be creative within the industry as well, that some people might not know of.
Totally, man. Sky's the limit. It's like, I never would have thought, when I was going to Humber College, I never would have thought I just wanted to be Travis Barker. I just wanted to play big shows and be a drummer and be known as that. If you had told me that I would be, in movies and be working with like the who's who of the Hollywood animation side of things, and be doing these collaborations with these incredible artists that I never would have thought I'd get a chance to be in the same room as, I wouldn't have believed it. But I think that's the power of, I certainly don't want to, like, I was going to say it's the power of ambition, but it's also the power of, once again, making your own luck, of going out there, putting yourself out there, of going out on that limb, taking a chance, going with your gut, saying this may not be my core field of expertise. That doesn't mean that I can't find validity and find sustenance in this kind of new thing. In the interest of always growing as an artist, I think you want to always be doing that, right? Like, it's stepping outside your comfort zone. Not a lot of amazing stuff or groundbreaking stuff happens inside your comfort zone. A lot of it happens on the outside of that comfort zone. And I think the more you can kind of carefully and in a calculated way take those steps out, that's where real growth happens, and real kind of like, the pushing of the envelope happens and that sort of stuff. So yeah, man. Yeah,
for sure. All right. So I have one more final official question, and then we like to do something fun at the end of our interviews. Nice. So my last question to you is, why do you think music education is important to you?
I think it's important to me. And once again, I want to preface by saying that this is my individual experience, and it's very important that everybody is on their own path, especially with something as strange as music and as so not guaranteed as music, right? It's the in addition to obviously giving me a hell of a basis to build upon back in the day, getting back into the elementary school and what we were talking about being fortunate to have a music program in high school and stuff. One of the biggest values that music school and music education has taught me is that it helped me realize that education wasn't necessarily best applied in my instance in the walls of a place like Humber. Humber actually showed me what I didn't want, right? Humber introduced me to so many wonderful people and so many inspiring people and taught me so much. But ultimately, it actually helped me realize, once again, on the support of someone like Mark Kelso, shout out Kelso. Like, it's what a good, huge moment that was to say, just because you've identified a path for yourself that may exist outside of this kind of beaten path that is school, doesn't mean that, on the topic of music education, doesn't mean that real world education, that real world experience. I think Humber's probably still doing co-op, this sort of stuff, right? Where you do actually get that sort of real world experience. If you've created a way to earn that for yourself before you finish up, to paraphrase Kelso, school is always going to be there. If you find a way, because this industry and this space is so strange and there's no guaranteed path to success, if you identify something that at a gut level resonates with you, it says, my music education, I've been able to glean a whole bunch of stuff from the kind of school-based music education, but what if I can get even more music education by going out there and just going for it? And I think that wouldn't be possible without the more formal music education path that I had taken. So it's not like I can say, oh, don't even consider music school. Of course, consider music school, because even if it teaches you that it's not the right move for you, there is so much value in that. I can't tell you how many people that I came up with and grew up with who had, there's high school, high school's done. They had no idea what they wanted, and the value of knowing what you want, especially when you're going to be a freelance artist or trying to, have a group that you want to really get to the next level. It's so important to kind of keep that at the forefront. And, I think about all these steps along the way, whether they were rooted directly in that kind of music school path, or they were rooted in that kind of real world or, boots on the ground type educational experience. It's kind of like a yin yang, one wouldn't exist without the other. So I think to boil it all down, doing whatever it takes to find out and discover what you actually want is the most important thing. Don't rely on school to tell you what you want. Go into school being critical of yourself and being critical of what's being taught to you for the sole purpose. Be selfish about it. Put yourself first and realize that at the end of the day, you're the only person. You're going to school with competitors of you. Really, you're the only person that steers your own ship. Cherry pick what's being presented to you. When you're in masterclass at Larnell, there's probably so much gold being dropped at all times. And the stuff that's resonating most with you, keep that with you. Make notes on it. Explore it in your own time. Grow within that, because that's the sort of stuff that you're not going to be spoon-fed, or no one's going to hold your hand through that, right? Think about it like an entrepreneur, because that is what you are, especially as an independent musician, as someone currently in music school, thinking of what it's going to take to get you to that next level. I remember going to school with so many folks who I think were maybe under a bit of a misguided thought that once they jumped through all the hoops of school and they had their degree or diploma to hold up at the end of it, they were kind of off to the races, right? And the reality is that with art school in general, that's just not the case. The true value, in my opinion and in my experience of music school, is helping you see what you don't want so that you can narrow down the things that you do want and kind of come out of it, whether that's at the end of the 4 years with the degree, or if you wind up doing something like what I did or like a Mark Kelso did and actually find a way to jump ship a little early and go for the real world side of things. It all kind of comes back to the same roots of follow the beaten path, learn as much as you can, but when the right opportunity comes for you to sidestep that beaten path, do that as well. Put yourself out there in full confidence. Take that risk, because the risk takers, especially in this realm, are the ones that get the higher risk, higher reward, right? And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joel, for sharing a bit about that.
Yeah,
like I mentioned, we're going to do a little set of fast 5 questions for the end of the interview. All right, so are you ready?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Question number 1. What is your favorite movie soundtrack?
I'm going to date myself again. So there's a movie called Garden State. I don't know if you've heard of that movie, or who Zach Braff is, the actor from a show called Scrubs. You're too young.
Probably not. Yeah.
Great movie. Funny enough, highly recommend you check out Garden State. Incredible movie. It's Zach, and then he plays his love interest in the movie is Natalie Portman. So it's about essentially this kid who grew up in the Garden State, New Jersey, and it's kind of, he wrote the movie in high school and then got a chance to actually make it when he was older and had more success. So he got to put together to handpick the OST. And it ended up winning a Grammy for best soundtrack that year. And it's just this really eclectic mix of great tunes. And every time I listen to any of them, whether in the context of listening to the whole soundtrack or one on its own, I'm just transported back to that was a movie that I was obsessed with in high school, for example. And all my positive high school memories and stuff are very tied to that. So that will forever be one of my favorite films and certainly my favorite soundtrack.
Nice. How about instrument you wish you played?
Man, that's a toughie because it's funny in what we've been able to. People always come to us. They're like, "Oh, you guys play. You guys are so amazing." We're like, we know it's such a jack of all trades, master of none situation. Like we'll get an instrument in and figure it out enough to be able to get through a video, but by no means are we masters at it. But I won't factor any of those in. A big thing that my buddy Kevin that I went to school with at Humber got into that I wish I had gotten into, and it just wasn't the vibe for me at the time is tabla. What an incredible, even just getting a chance with Steve Mancuso. I'm not sure if Steve Mancuso is still around, but
yeah, he is. Yeah,
he's the man.
Yeah,
getting a chance to get into soulkatsu and various things like this, and really just get even a glimpse into the wild world of Indian music and Indian rhythms. I think that I really enjoyed that, and I think had I been able to press pause time or be able to create more time for myself back then, I would have loved to just dive head first. It's not an easy experience. I'm sure it's like you're in for multiple years of just soulkatsu before you actually even sit in front of the tabla, right? So yeah. I would love to at some point in my life, maybe it's like a retirement thing for me, actually have the chance to like dive deep into tabla and Indian music, because it's incredible and it's so different in so many ways to the music that we're used to in this part of the world. So it's I always really enjoyed that.
Yeah, nice. This is a hard one. What is your hidden talent?
Man, I don't know. I'm trying to think, man. Like it's I don't know if I have any. I think I have a couple talents that are I've become known for. I mean, geez. I'll have to maybe we can revisit that one at the end. I'll have to think about it. I don't know if I have one, dude. Not that I know of anyway.
Good. How about your dream vacation spot?
Yeah. Man, I think Hawaii is way up there. I got a chance recently to go to a small island in Hawaii called Lanai with my girl. And that was our first trip coming out of the pandemic. And Hawaii is just different, man. I think any place where, the island we went to is 60,000 square miles in size and has a population of just over 2,500 people. So like there's just nobody around. And then beyond that though, like by the end of a week-long trip, we knew people by name. Like there's one gas station on the island, there's one hospital on the island. That kind of small town vibe, especially coming from the pace of life here in a city like Toronto, you know what I mean? Where any sort of bustling big city, stressful, work first, work first, enjoy second. You go out there and there's people out there that really don't have a lot of possessions, but they're so happy, they're so fulfilled. It's so community driven. And I think places like that are what I would call my dream vacation spots that you can just go and remember, oh yeah, like there's just because of where we live and the kind of paces that we're used to doesn't mean that we can't take a page out of these guys' books and actually slow down sometimes and actually put enjoyment above grinding and above work. I think it's just so important to find moments like that. So whether the Hawaiian Islands or somewhere else that I've yet to discover yet, I think going to places like that where people are so fulfilled and so happy with so little. And I think there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And last but not least, what is your favorite concert you've attended?
Okay. It's funny that I mentioned the Mars Volta System of a Down one. That was one of, because I worshiped those guys, especially like when I left or coming out of high school and before Humber. I was just so obsessed with those guys. The coolest gig ever, the one I'll never forget, was when this is back when there's a venue in Toronto called the Cool House, which I think now is just known as the Government or something. It's like more of just kind of a club down on like Queens Quay. They were playing the Cool House, and the story goes, like the leader of the band, his name's Omar, is just like an audiophile and an obsessive kind of crazy dude to the next level, where they actually showed up and they showed up for the gig. They went into the room, huge room, like, all standing room only kind of thing. It fits around 5,000 people. They went in, they checked out the PA system, and he was like, no, I hate this PA, tear it down. So he literally is like, go. He told his crew, like, go and rent another PA somewhere in the city that's going to sound better than this one. And literally they tore it down. They put in their own, I think they ended up getting fined or sued after the gig happened for like overstepping or whatever, but they did that. And then they actually was the only night on that tour, because they went to all this effort to basically rebuild the venue. They might as well put on a long show. They played the entirety of their album, which was called Francis the Mute, which is to this day, one of my favorite albums, concept album, like just super incredible. They played the entire thing. They played for like 4 hours. So the combination of them being like doing the badass rock star thing, being like, tear down this PA and put a better one in, and then actually coming out and just stretching out and like just giving this really unique kind of one-off experience. I'll never forget it, man.
Wow. That sounds like a lot of work to put in, but probably incredibly worth it.
Worth it for the audience. I hope the crew got paid double time.
Yeah.
Dude, I'll have to get back to you with the hidden talent. I'll have to. I'm drawing a huge blank right now, man.
That's okay. It's like I said, it's a stumper.
Totally.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joel. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. It was great chatting with you and hearing a bit about your background and your very unique and interesting career pathway.
Hey man, Lucas, really appreciate it. Hopefully whoever gets a chance to see this will find one or two interesting things along the way there. That's the hope. But yeah, man, appreciate the opportunity. I'm super glad to do it. Great to hear that you're doing your thing at Humber and your journey is unfolding and best of luck to you with everything else. And keep in touch, man. Happy to chat. It's really cool to be on the other side of the schooling experience at this point, and be able to kind of like have a whole lot of hindsight that I don't even really, like I was saying, I don't even really ever take a moment to stop and think about. But then I have a chat with someone like yourself and I realized that like, there's probably a lot of things that I've encountered and experienced over these years that might be of value to someone like yourself. So happy to do it, man.
All right. Thank you again. And take care.
Take care, brother. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us. If you like what you heard, you can learn more about our organization at bandology.ca, which features information about music education, advocacy and research, and our Play a Gig and Bandcamp programs. Follow us on social media for more videos, performance, and interviews on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.